a few days ago, I was listening to a short podcast by a motivational speaker. You may know her. Her name is Brandy Harvey. And her podcast had the title, How Deep Listening Can Change Your Life. And in it, Brandy said, deep listening is my superpower. I wish I could confidently say that it is also my superpower. To be honest, I'm still struggling with the opposite end of deep listening, and that is not paying attention. I have some tricks. Looking at the speaker with seeming interest while plotting when I can interrupt them and give my opinion on the matter. Nodding politely while my mind is really engaged elsewhere. Daydreaming, checking my iPhone under the desk or just out of view of the TV screen when I'm on Zoom. I have done all of that and more. Now, of course, things have gotten a little better because I have gone through seminary and I've taken courses and I did clinical practice in spiritual care, in pastoral care. And while doing that, I acquired some tools to, quote unquote, change my ways. I didn't always practice, but I learned the value of keeping my mouth shut and letting the other person speak. Keeping an open posture, using encouraging words, and a lot of other things. I am working on it. Now, years before I even entered seminary, I learned to listen deeply, to pay attention. In another context, it was through the practice of meditation. I sometimes went to Buddhist retreats in the Soto Zen tradition, which is a very quiet tradition. And I meditated in time slots of 50 minutes when we had a really rough leader, usually 40 minutes. And that was several times a day. I was just thinking about the one leader who said he was giving us 10 minutes bonus time in meditation. But this tradition is one of sitting quietly. And at some point, the leader, who is called the Godo or the Zen master, may break into that silence with what is called a kusen. A kusen is a teaching. After practicing for several days, during the silent periods, we would start hearing sounds in nature, sounds that were quite far away, very faint and very soothing. We didn't hear many sounds from each other because we were practicing being still. Now, even though there were some sounds, to us it seemed like they were all part of the silence. We all sat perfectly still. We were listening deeply, we would find out later, hearing things that we would normally not even notice. Our awareness was heightened. But our meditation practice did not end there. Once a day or so, in the middle of a meditation session, the leader started to talk. The first word they spoke had an amazing effect on us. We didn't just hear it. it went through us like an electric shock. In all that silence, all of a sudden, there it was. Whoever might have been dozing off also was now wide awake. We were so open to listening deeply with our ears, our minds, our hearts, our whole beings, that every word of the lesson stuck with us. And during the free time afterwards, we would connect with one another and talk further about it. We would actually remember the words. There were some other tricks used in the practice of meditation in this tradition. And in case you ever think about doing this particular trick involved a so-called kiyosaku. A kiyosaku is a stick, a wooden stick. It looks like a wooden sword. It's about this long, made of hardwood like oak or chestnut, and it has flat sides. The meaning of the word kiyosaku is teaching stick. It's also called the attention stick. That reminds me of the attention stick my 4th grade teacher used. It was a ruler, also made out of oak, a thick ruler, and he would whack us over the knuckles. And one time, I remember, it's like I can still feel it, but he put it down on the floor by the wall, and I had to kneel on it for like half an hour. I didn't think I could ever stand up again. I think nowadays that would be called torture, but then it was just part of teaching. Now, the person in charge of wielding the kiyosaku, they would ritually walk around. There's a lot of ritual involved in it. And at one point, when the time came, they would strike you on the pressure points on your shoulders. I can tell you, just going off script here, that I used to do this. I am a kiyosaku person who is specialized in doing this task. I'm very good at it, but I would prefer not to demonstrate. I don't want to be sued by anybody, but I can assure you, it takes some training, and you have to do these things where you kind of use the kiyosaku stick and you follow it into the muscle. It's an interesting thing. But anyway, not everybody gets hit. You have to request. Yes. And I can assure you that sometimes we were just begging for it. Because there are those times when your legs have fallen asleep. You think they'll never wake up. And being hit by the kiyosaku wakes up the legs almost instantly. And as one becomes more accustomed, more experienced in meditation, the effect of the legs waking up again is felt even before the person reaches you and hits your shoulders. It is a fascinating mind-body connection. You could say it's a spiritual experience. It's an awakening experience, literally. It worked. Now to get to the point. Why is deep listening so important? I'm going to answer this in 3 different ways that people use to explain it. First, within the Buddhist practice, there is a well-known poem by probably the most famous Zen master. It was Zen master Dogen Zengi, who lived in the early part of the 13th century. I think he was born in the year 1200. He wrote a book called the Shobogenzo, and if you read that, it will take you a year to understand it. And that's if you pay a lot of attention. So in that book, partly, there is a little poem that translates to something like this. To know yourself is to forget yourself. To forget yourself is to be awakened to all things. How do you forget yourself? By being silent, by quieting your mind, by not focusing on all these plots that are in your head that you are going to engage in with other people. Just quiet your mind, be still. And what are these things? These myriad things that Dogen Zengi called them. They are other beings, other people, perhaps at the end even enlightenment. So the forgetting of ourselves, when we learn to listen deeply, allows us to connect with others. And when we can connect with others, forgetting ourselves, then we can engage in empathy and compassion. One of the many wise things that the Dalai Lama often says is this: whether one believes in religion or not, whether one believes in rebirth or not, there isn't anyone who does not appreciate kindness and compassion. Here's a second way to explain the importance of deep listening. In her book with the title Radical Presence, author Mary Rose O'Reilly says that most people are alive, yes, but they are not alive in spirit. Their spirits wither away due to a lack of deep listening. She says, by now we know what's coming. She says we only listen so we can counter-argue, so we can stake a claim for ourselves, so we can critique the person we are sitting at the table with. We, all of us, live in a culture where we listen in order to get something for ourselves, in order to persuade the other person to plot, she says. But when we let go of our ego and forget the self, then we can truly listen. We can establish a true connection with the other person or persons. Then we can do things together. We can even create a social movement. This is a good time for that. There's a famous social activist who many of you know, Grace Lee Boggs, the Chinese-American civil rights activist who lived from 1915 to 2015. And she was active mostly in Detroit. And she used to say, this is a good lesson for us today. She said, social movements are born of critical connections rather than of critical mass. Let's breathe on that for a moment before we go to yet another way to explain the importance of deep listening. Now, for a third way to explain the importance of deep listening and how it can be unleashed through meditation, I go back to the podcast of Brandy Harvey. She calls herself a recovering talkaholic. When you listen to her podcast, you realize that she also has not fully recovered. But she says wisely that when we learn to listen deeply, we can let go of the daily conditioning, the prejudiced opinions we have about the other person. And we can now open up to let them reveal to us who they really are, to peel back their layers of defense and open up. And in this way, we can deepen our relationships with one another. And put that together with Grace Lee Boggs and with what Dogen Zenji said about forgetting the self. And we have something here. To make listening, and especially deep listening, part of our daily life, Brandy says that we have to do 3 simple things. The first, learn to be quiet. This is where the meditation comes in. The second is, become curious. Ask open-ended questions in order to coax the other person out of the place where they are hiding their feelings and their thoughts. And the third is really the conclusion, and that is that this is what gets us connected. It's not just good for that connected relationship and where it brings us. It is good for our mental health, for our body, and ultimately, not just for relationships with some others, but for our community. We begin to marvel about everything around us when we have these connections. We fill in the blank spots in our hearts and in our minds where we previously did not bother to explore connections and find out about others. We begin to have a receptive mind, and with awe and wonder, we can discover the wonderful sparkles in our daily lives. And may we make it so. Let us now rise in body or spirit.